When people say they feel stuck in life, most of the time they're not describing a lack of opportunity. They're describing a lack of alignment between who they are on the inside and what they're doing on the outside. The truth is, you can't build a new life while clinging to an old identity. And this is where most people get trapped. They try to change their actions without ever transforming how they see themselves. They go to the gym, but deep down they still see themselves as unhealthy. They start a business, but inside they still identify as broke or as an employee. They try to improve their relationships, but their inner narrative says they're not worthy of love. The result? They sabotage progress because their identity and their actions are not in agreement. The wealthy, the successful, the fulfilled, they all know this principle: your identity is the thermostat of your life. Just like a thermostat regulates temperature, your identity regulates your results. If thermostat is set to 70 degrees and the room heats up to 85, the system automatically cools it back down. And if it drops to 60, it pulls it back up. In the same way, if your identity is set at average, every time you try to rise above average, your subconscious will find a way to pull you back down. That's why people who win the lottery often lose it all within a few years. Their bank account changed, but their identity did not. They had millions in their hands, but poverty still lived in their mind. Getting unstuck begins by making a radical decision about who you are. It's not about what you've done or what you currently have. It's about who you choose to be going forward. And this choice must come before the evidence. Most people wait for the results to prove their new identity. They wait until they're rich to see themselves as wealthy. They wait until they're fit to see themselves as disciplined. They wait until their relationships are flourishing to see themselves as lovable. But that's backwards. You don't wait for proof. You create proof by embodying the identity first. Belief precedes behavior, and behavior produces evidence. When you decide to shift your identity, you start asking yourself different questions. Instead of asking, what do I need to do to get unstuck? You begin asking, who do I need to become so that getting unstuck is inevitable? That one shift is the difference between temporary change and permanent transformation. Because if you only change what you do, you might succeed for a season. But if you change who you are, you succeed for a lifetime. Now, here's the challenge your old identity won't let go without a fight. It will whisper lies. It will remind you of your past mistakes. It will tell you, this is who you've always been. You can't change now. That voice is not the truth. It's just conditioning. It's the echo of years of repetition. But here's the good news: conditioning can be broken. You created your old identity through repeated thoughts and actions, and you can create a new one the same way. You shift your identity by declaring who you are becoming and then proving it to yourself with small, consistent choices. This is why affirmations without action don't work. You can stand in the mirror and say, I am wealthy, I am successful, I am free, but if your actions scream the opposite, your subconscious knows you're lying. The power comes when your words and your actions agree. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, and choose differently because you are no longer trying to become someone new. You are simply living as the person you've already decided to be. That decision creates integrity within yourself. And integrity produces momentum. Think about it. Every great transformation in history started with identity. Nelson Mandela didn't just fight for freedom. He saw himself as a free man long before the world recognized him as one. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't just march for civil rights. He carried the identity of a man who already lived in the world he was dreaming of. When you carry the right identity, even your struggles become confirmation of who you are becoming. Obstacles no longer define you. They refine you. So if you're feeling stuck right now, don't just look at your circumstances. Look at your self-image. Who do you believe you are? That's the root of the trap. If you can elevate your identity, your actions will naturally rise to meet it. If you see yourself as disciplined, you'll show up differently in your health. If you see yourself as a wealth creator, you'll handle money differently. If you see yourself as someone worthy of love, your relationships will transform. The external shift always follows the internal one. You are not stuck because life is unfair. You are stuck because your identity has not caught up with your destiny. And the moment you choose to raise the thermostat, everything else begins to adjust. So let me leave you with this. The fastest way to get unstuck is to stop trying to do more and start deciding to be more. Who you are is shaping what you do, and what you do is shaping what you have. Change the root, and the fruit will take care of itself. The key is identity. Decide today who you are, and then let your actions confirm it. Because the truth is, you don't need to wait to become unstuck. You only need to decide you are no longer the person who stays stuck. One of the reasons people feel stuck in life is because they've surrendered control of their environment. They let their surroundings dictate their future, not realizing that environment is one of the most powerful forces shaping identity, decisions, and ultimately destiny. You can have the best intentions, the strongest willpower, even the clearest goals, but if you remain in an environment that constantly pulls you backward, you'll find yourself living in cycles you can't escape. It's not always because you're weak or lazy. It's because the soil you're planted in won't allow the seed to grow. Think about it. You can take the same seed and place it in different environments, and you'll get completely different results. Put it in nutrient-rich soil with the right amount of water and sunlight, and that seed will flourish into something far greater than itself. Place it in dry, toxic soil, and it won't matter how much potential was inside the seed. It will wither. People are no different. The seed of greatness is already inside you, but if you stay in environments filled with doubt, negativity, and complacency, you'll find it hard to grow into who you're meant to be. This is why so many people get caught in repeating the same patterns year after year. They say they want change, but they go back to the same rooms, the same conversations, The same circles of influence that shape the old version of themselves. And here's the truth: your environment will always outlast your intentions. You can want transformation all you like, but if you keep surrounding yourself with things and people who reinforce the old identity, you get pulled back into old habits. That's why the saying is true: show me your friends, and I'll show you your future, because proximity creates permission. The standards of the people you're around become the standards you unconsciously adopt for yourself. Now, I'm not talking about abandoning people who love you or pretending you're better than others. I'm talking about consciously curating the environments you allow to shape your mindset. It means asking, what rooms am I sitting in? What conversations am I feeding on? What voices am I letting echo in my mind? Because whether you realize it or not, you're being discipled every day by your social media feed, by the news you watch, by the colleagues you spend hours with. And if you don't take control of that discipleship, you'll drift into mediocrity by default. Here's the beautiful part: when you shift your environment, you don't just change your external circumstances. You give your inner identity permission to expand. Being around people who dream bigger forces you confront your own small thinking. Being in spaces where excellence is normal raises your standards without you even realizing it. That's why wealthy people, successful people, fulfilled people are so intentional about who they spend time with. They know they can't afford to let their environment contradict their identity. But let's be clear, changing your environment doesn't always mean moving to a new city or cutting off everyone you know. Sometimes it's as simple as creating micro environments in your daily life, a quiet space in your home dedicated to thinking and vision casting, a curated playlist that reminds you of who you're becoming, not who you've been, a library of books that challenge your mindset instead of numbing your spirit. Even 10 minutes a day in the right environment can do more for your growth than 10 hours in the wrong one. And this is where discipline meets design. If you wait till you feel inspired to create new environments, it won't happen. You must design them intentionally, because your current environment is designed, just maybe not by you. It's designed by habit, by convenience, by culture. If you don't take control, you'll live by default instead of by design. And that default will keep you stuck. Now, here's something that might challenge you. Sometimes the environment you need to change isn't external, it's internal. You can leave the room, but if you carry the same mental environment of fear, scarcity, or self-doubt, you'll recreate the same limitations wherever you go. So while you're curating the outside, you must also curate the inside. Ask yourself daily, what am I allowing my mind to dwell on? What internal environment am I creating through my thoughts? Because your mind is the soil that produces every action in your life. And no matter how rich the external environment, if your inner environment is poisoned with doubt, the seed won't grow. So if you feel stuck, don't just look at your effort, look at your environment. Don't just ask, what am I doing wrong? Ask, where am I planted? Because environment is not neutral. It's either accelerating you forward or dragging you backward. And let me leave you with this: you don't get unstuck by trying harder. You get unstuck by planting yourself in environments where growth becomes inevitable. Change the room and you'll change the results. Because no matter how much potential is inside of you, potential cannot thrive in the wrong place. Surround yourself with the right people, the right voices, and the right spaces, and you'll find that getting unstuck isn't a struggle. It becomes the natural outcome of who you are becoming. One of the greatest reasons people stay stuck in life is because they're trying to move forward while carrying the weight of unresolved emotions and unprocessed experiences. You can have the right vision, the right strategy, even the right environment, but if you're dragging old disappointments, unforgiveness, or fear into every new season, it's like running a race with chains around your ankles. You may make progress, but it will always feel heavy, slow, and exhausting. And over time, that weight convinces many people to stop running altogether. You see, most people underestimate how much their emotional state is shaping their outcomes. They think emotions are private, internal things that can be suppressed or ignored. But emotions are not silent passengers. They are loud drivers. If you don't take control of them, they will steer your decisions, your relationships, and your self-perception. And here's the catch: the past has no power over you except the power you keep giving it through the emotions you've refused to release. Let's talk about unforgiveness for a moment, because it is one of the most subtle prisons people live in. When someone wrongs you and you hold on to that pain, it feels like you're punishing them by refusing to let it go. But in reality, unforgiveness doesn't chain the offender. It chains you. It keeps your mind replaying the moment, reliving the wound, and re-experiencing the betrayal. That mental loop consumes energy you could have invested in building your future. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what they did. It's about excusing yourself from carrying the weight of it. It's releasing yourself from being defined by a moment you didn't choose. The same goes for failure. Many people try something once, fail, and then carry that scar as proof that they're incapable. They build an emotional story around the failure that becomes part of their identity. Instead of saying, I failed at this, they start saying, I am a failure. And once failure becomes identity, every new opportunity feels like a threat. They sabotage themselves because deep down, they don't want to experience the pain of failure again. But here's the truth: failure is not an identity, it's an event. It's information, not definition. And the only way to release the emotional hold of failure is to reinterpret it as feedback, not fate. Fear works the same way. Fear is nothing more than imagination turned against you. It's your mind rehearsing the worst possible outcome and then tricking your body into reacting as if it's real. And when fear goes unaddressed, it freezes people into inaction. They stay stuck not because they don't know what to do, But because their emotions convince them that the risk is too great, the pain is too near, the possibility of loss is too strong. Releasing fear doesn't mean you eliminate it. It means you refuse to let it dictate your actions. You take the step even with trembling hands because you've decided your future deserves more loyalty than your fears. So how do you actually release these emotional weights? It begins with recognition. You cannot release what you refuse to acknowledge. Many people bury their emotions under business, entertainment, or achievement, pretending they're fine while carrying silent burdens. But suppressed emotions don't disappear. They leak. They show up in your relationships, in your health, in your financial choices. Recognition is the first act of freedom because it allows you to name what has been controlling you in the shadows. Then comes reframing. You can't change the past, but you can change the meaning you attach to it. Maybe the betrayal wasn't meant to destroy you, it was meant to redirect you. Maybe the failure wasn't the end of the road. It was the foundation for wisdom you'll need on the next one. Reframing doesn't deny what happened, but it transforms how you carry it. Suddenly, what was once a weight becomes fuel. What was once a scar becomes a story of resilience. Finally, there's release. Release is an act of surrender. It's deciding to stop rehearsing the pain and start rehearsing the possibility. It's refusing to let the old script dictate the new chapter. Release isn't a one-time event, it's a practice. Sometimes you'll have to remind yourself daily, that doesn't define me anymore. That season is over. I'm free to move forward. And every time you choose release, you lighten your load, making it possible to accelerate toward your purpose. This is why emotional freedom is not a luxury, it's a necessity. You cannot build a wealthy, fulfilled, or purposeful life if your emotions are anchored in the past. You can't run at full speed toward your destiny while looking over your shoulder at what hurt you. Freedom comes when you decide that your future deserves a stronger voice than your history. So you feel stuck, ask yourself not just, what am I doing wrong, but what am I still holding on to? Because oftentimes, the breakthrough isn't in doing more. It's in releasing what no longer serves you. And I'll leave you with this thought: the past cannot be changed, but the meaning you give it can. Release the weight, and you'll discover that you were never as stuck as you thought. You were only carrying more than you needed to. When you let go, you don't just get lighter, you get freer, and in that freedom, you'll find the power to move forward. Momentum is one of the most underestimated forces in human life. People often imagine that breakthroughs happen in sudden, dramatic moments, like lightning striking out of nowhere. But the truth is, most breakthroughs are the product of small, consistent actions compounded over time. The problem is that when someone feels stuck, they wait for a big event to jolt them forward instead of creating momentum through intentional, incremental steps. They tell themselves, when I get the money, when I meet the right person, when I feel ready, that's when I'll move. But the reality is movement creates readiness, not the other way around. Readiness is rarely something you feel beforehand. It's something you gain as you step forward. Think about it. A train doesn't start at full speed. It begins with a slow push, heavy and almost immovable. But once momentum builds, stopping that train becomes nearly impossible. That's how your life works. At first, progress may feel agonizingly slow. You'll wonder if the small changes are even worth it. But if you stay consistent, momentum begins to build, and soon your effort produces results with less resistance. This is why building momentum is often more important than achieving perfection. Progress creates energy, and energy creates breakthroughs. Now, momentum doesn't just apply to habits or routines. It applies to psychology. When you take one courageous step, your mind records it as proof that you are capable. That proof makes it easier to take the next step, and then the next. Fear begins to shrink because your actions provide evidence that the fear isn't as powerful as it once seemed. Momentum becomes not just external movement, but internal confidence. And this is why the first step, no matter how small, is the most powerful. It is the beginning of momentum, the signal to your brain and your spirit that you are no longer stuck. You are in motion. But here's where many people miss it. They try to create momentum by starting too big. They set massive goals that overwhelm them before they even begin. They think they need a giant leap when what they actually need is a small step in the right direction. Small steps compound. Writing one page a day becomes a book. Saving $10 a day becomes financial stability. Making one phone call a day becomes a network. Success is not built in the bursts. It's built in the boring, consistent, repeatable actions that seem insignificant at first glance. Momentum also requires alignment. You cannot build momentum if your actions are constantly pulling you in opposite directions. Imagine pedaling a bicycle but switching directions every 5 seconds. You won't get anywhere. That's what happens when your daily actions aren't aligned with your long-term goals. You expend energy but never experience acceleration. Momentum is created not just by movement, but by sustained directional movement. When your actions are in harmony with your vision, even the small steps create exponential progress. Another critical element of momentum is environment. You can have the best intentions and still sabotage your momentum if you're surrounded by voices and influences that reinforce your stuckness. The wrong environment breeds inertia, but the right environment, where people encourage, challenge, and model progress, acts like fuel to your movement. Sometimes getting unstuck isn't just about what you do, but about who you're around while doing it. A supportive environment multiplies your momentum, while a toxic one drains it. And don't overlook celebration. Many people sabotage momentum because they don't pause to acknowledge progress. They minimize their small wins, telling themselves it's not enough, and in doing so, they rob themselves of the energy that comes from accomplishment. Celebration doesn't mean complacency. It means reinforcing progress so your mind and spirit associate movement with reward. When you celebrate the small step, you give yourself fuel to take bigger ones. Momentum is the antidote to stagnation. You don't need to wait for the stars to align, for someone to rescue you, or for life to hand you the perfect opportunity. You need to move. Today, in whatever way you can. Once you start moving, refuse to stop, because momentum compounds just like money does. The longer you sustain it, the more powerful it becomes, until what once seemed impossible begins to feel inevitable. So if you feel stuck right now, don't wait for a grand strategy session or a lightning bolt moment of inspiration. Ask yourself, what small step can I take today that aligns with where I want to go? Then take it. And tomorrow, take another. Before long, you won't just be moving, you'll be accelerating. Let me leave you with this thought. The power of momentum is that it doesn't just change your pace, it changes your perception. When you're stuck, the mountain looks unscalable. But once you start climbing, even slowly, the mountain begins to shrink beneath you. Momentum doesn't just move you forward, it changes the way you see what's possible. And the moment you see possibility, you're already freer than you were yesterday.